McDonald's was embraced by the Russian population after 32 years being there. For McDonald's to leave Russia was far more complex than most people would realize. They risked enormous boycotts, bad will. The whole accepted view in the Western world is that Russia's doing something terrible in Ukraine, and it's the moral obligation of people and businesses everywhere not to help that. So that's what they came to realize, and they left. I went to McDonald's headquarters in Chicago and sat down with the CEO, Chris Kempczinski. Chris, you've said this decision to exit Russia was a very complicated one. What made it so complicated?
I think for us, the complication was both the size of our business. We have a very large business in Russia, 850 restaurants, a whole supply chain that's connected to that, but also the fact that we have 62,000 employees in Russia, and thinking through both what's good for the business, but also how do we make sure that we're taking care of our people and doing that at the scale that we're talking about. How do you just make sure that the restaurants are secure, that you understand where your people are, is everybody safe? So for the first few days, it was working through all the operational elements of, now a very different situation in Ukraine.
The arrival of that first McDonald's in 1990, that symbolized the opening of Russia to the outside world, which was full of optimism. People were excited about it. The departure of McDonald's symbolizes just the opposite, the closing to the outside world.
McDonald's was revolutionary in a way, which is, again, funny to say about the fast food, but that's it, that's true. It was the standard of quality. It was also the manner of communication, smiles, again, something unknown to many Soviet citizens at that time. It was one of the symbols of the United States. It was famous when it opened. Everybody knew the story.
McDonald's arrived in Russia in restaurant in the Soviet Union of 1990 was a huge undertaking because none of the infrastructure that any normal McDonald's relies on, none of that was there. They didn't have the potatoes needed for making the French fries. They had to import seeds, and they had to import experts from the Netherlands who taught farmers how to raise these potatoes. They brought in other people who taught the ranchers how to raise the beef for the hamburgers. Everything had to be created anew. Ultimately, the McDonald's decision on this, which didn't come till the middle of May, was that they were going to exit Russia. They had to think about whether it would even be legal for them to operate because of U.S. sanctions on Russia. But those sanctions restricted what McDonald's could do in Russia.
There were sanctions that were imposed on one of the banks in Russia, Sberbank. For us, the challenge with that was they process about 90% of our payroll. So the 62,000 employees that I was talking about are getting processed largely through checking and savings accounts that they have at Sberbank. So how are you going to then be able to pay those employees? And in many cases, our restaurants are not in the big cities like a Moscow or in St. Petersburg. They might be in more of a smaller community where there may only be one bank in town. And so for us, that's just one example where when those sanctions went in place and not being able to pay our people, it becomes pretty challenging to run a business.
They sold the whole operation to one of their franchisees, and he had to agree as part of the sale that he would employ those employees for at least 2 years. The suppliers would also be taken care of. However, McDonald's did not transfer to the buyer any of its intellectual property. That means its trademarks, its name, the golden arches. It means the recipes, the menu. None of those things went to the new buyer. Cranes came in and took down the golden arches and the McDonald's names. The menus had to be done all over again. No more Coca-Cola. The new name, by the way, translates as tasty, and that's it. I gather it is not legal now for the successor company that is running the restaurants that used to be McDonald's restaurants to use menu items or trademarks or anything else. But the question I want to ask you is, what about the special sauce on the Big Mac? Because that's crucial. Is that a secret?
The special sauce is a secret. We'll not be able to get the special sauce. I won't be able to tell you about the special sauce. Now, others have tried to replicate the special sauce, but none have succeeded. So unfortunately for our Russian customers, they will no longer get to enjoy the special sauce in Russia.
Let's hope things will change and they will come back. Besides other businesses, it was a very good opportunity for them. So it's kind of a not win-win, it's a lose-lose situation for all sides.
A lot of people around the world wonder if McDonald's could ever come back to Russia.
I would say it's so difficult at this point to know how the situation evolves. So certainly I would hope that at some point maybe the situation or the conditions on the ground would allow us to reconsider that and go back in, but it's a dynamic situation. I think there's so many things that need to play out. It's impossible to know at this juncture.